on Cancel for Maintenance, we not only parody our day-to-day tasks, but we also like to celebrate those who go above and beyond for our communities outside the line. Have you ever experienced such adverse events that you've said to yourself, never again will I, nor those around me go through such times again? Today, we bring along the nonprofit architect who shares with us how he overcame such adversities and how he now helps the helpers. This is Heroes Beyond the Line, Part 2. Our guest today is a model example of what it means to help the helper. He's an aircraft technician, naval flight officer, and runs a business that helps nonprofit organizations grow and reach their goals to help those in need. Please welcome the nonprofit architect, Travis Taco John Johnson.
Taco John.
I guess where you've used my call sign on the show, so that's a first for me. And go ahead and mark that down.
Perfect.
I think that does take the cake as the now the number one best call sign we've had on.
Right.
That's fantastic.
That is great. All right, Mr. Taco John Johnson. I'm sorry, I got to keep saying it. It's so funny. So, Travis, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, you're in the Navy, and you also run a business that helps nonprofit organizations grow, develop, and reach their goal, which is helping others. What drove you to join the Navy in the first place?
Well, I joined the Navy because my life was absolute garbage. At the time, I had just finished up 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 foster homes. I survived 2 murder attempts and got into some pretty serious trouble with the law. And there was no future in the northern Minnesota town I grew up in. If I count that as the town I grew up in, it was just the last town I happened to be in. And it wasn't, there's only a couple of good decisions I've ever made in my life. Finding Jesus, joining the Navy, and marrying my wife are easily the top 3. And if it wasn't for the Navy, I really wouldn't be where I am today. I didn't have the opportunities. I didn't have the GPA. I didn't have the clean criminal record. I didn't have those things. I didn't have a foundation. And the Navy and the Lord and my wife really helped me build that foundation. Didn't matter what my past was. They allowed me to build and move forward, and I had the choice to do so. So I was very happy for all of those.
Wow. And you said 36 moves prior to the Navy.
Right now, 50.
So how old were you when you joined the Navy then?
I was 18. I graduated high school at 17. I took a year to find myself, and I found that all the civilian jobs I was eligible for sucked. So I joined a year later at 18.
Yeah, I understand that.
As an E1 ejection seat guy, an AME.
Oh, AME, he says.
AME.
I got to ask you, have you ever seen or heard of the Facebook group, The Stupid Log?
I have. That's run by another AME, and he's hilarious.
That guy is awesome. I love the chief character.
AME too. Get the hell out.
So 36 moves all before you were 18.
Yeah. So those of you that are a little slow in the math world, that's an average of 2 moves per year. And really, I graduated at 17, so it's just a little bit more than 2 moves per year. 12 schools also. So in kindergarten, 2nd grade, 4th grade, and 7th grade, I was in 3 different schools during each of those school years.
Wow.
Now, is that all in Minnesota, or is that around the country, or?
Most of them were in Minnesota, and then there was a time in 7th grade. We moved like 8 times that year, which was disgusting. One of those was homeschooling as we were on the road with a country band traveling the upper Midwest. So we got to see glorious North Dakota, the ugly edge of Montana into Wyoming before we quit the band and then drove back to Minnesota.
Wow.
Holy cow. Wow.
Right.
And I heard you say, now apologize if I'm bringing up bad memories, but 2 murder attempts?
Yeah.
I can't even fathom that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, same here. I mean, especially feeling all that before you've headed out into the world. I would say before you finished high school. I mean, I can only imagine how much that just had an impact on you.
Yeah, at 10 and 15.
Wow.
At 10, my sister tried to kill me, and at 15, my mom tried to kill me.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So people are like, "Oh, I love my mom. How you don't have a good relationship with your mom? How could you not like your mom?" Well, she did try to kill me.
I mean,
That's understandable. From your end, that's wild. I'm having trouble processing that, but
right,
but,
that's what
but
it's
glad,
supposed to be, right? It's supposed to be a hard thing to process. I was on a TV show with Joshua T. Berglund and Gratitude Unfiltered. Please feel free to check that out if you're listening to this. And it wasn't 30 seconds into the interview. That's the first question he asked, and he's just like, I've got nothing to say. I got nothing. And he brings on like former prostitutes, former drug dealers, like all kind of things that people, turning their lives around. And he's been doing this for a few years. And then here he is interviewing Travis, the nonprofit guy. And he's like, so don't feel bad at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, man, I'm glad I can't relate, but more glad that you made it through, and life is definitely way turned around for you now. You've taken the right steps.
Oh yeah. People are like, "Oh, this thing is so stressful." I'm like, "Is it?" Or like, "Are you getting killed right now? Is someone shooting at you?" No? Okay, well, let's just do this and move forward. They're like, "How can you do that?" Well, I've been through some things.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, your outlook and positivity on life has got to be just leaps and bounds over the next average person. You know what I mean? Just from your experiences alone, you have a different perspective and different, like, no matter how much it, like you said, no matter how much it sucks, it's not really that bad.
Yeah, that's not to say that I'm going to discount someone having a bad day, right?
Sure.
That bad days don't happen. And I'm definitely not saying that. I'm not comparing my terrible story to someone else's terrible story, right? Those are the building blocks that make us who we are. And, just surviving, any story, whatever your stressor is, because you got people growing up in upper middle class, and you've got one of the biggest groups of people that are overdosing on drugs.
Right. Yeah.
And they have different pressures. It's not the same type of pressure. They have different expectations. They have different things that are wrong in their life. But if you can show your kids love out there, if you can get your friends included and, be part of the group, is what most of us are searching for. If you can do that to your friends and family, then most of those problems just don't come up.
Right. That's very, very impactful for you to say. I remember, I think it was yourself that told me, or I've heard it somewhere else, where like you can't scale what someone's feeling to yours or yours to theirs. Like, because I see a lot of people fall into that pit where like, well, my day's bad, but his is worse, or his day is not as bad as mine, so I should feel better, kind of thing.
Different things help different people cope with different things.
Right.
Sometimes hearing a story like mine will, remind and encourage someone that this story might not be that bad, right? But it might not be up to you as a person to go say, "Well, did you hear Travis's story? Maybe you should suck it up." That's
right.
Right. Don't do that. Right. But there's little, things in there that can help us, remind us, keep us on track of keeping things in perspective, right? You didn't get the grade you wanted. You didn't talk to the girl. You got dumped. Whatever the thing is, it's a bad day, and it's okay to have a bad day. And it's okay to address a bad day. It's another thing to let that bad day get you down for a long period.
Right.
I know there's traumatic things out there that happen in a day, people that lose people in combat or come upon horrible situations or get abused, or among the other terrible things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's happened, you can make the choice to take the active steps to choose to do something about it, whether it's taking the steps you need to be mentally well most days. If it's to try EMDR, which is the number one VA recommended method of getting rid of and addressing PTSD, or if it's some other positive action, you can choose to change a circle of people. You can choose to start pouring knowledge into yourself. You can choose to be a better person. All those things are within your power of choice. And I think my story really helps kind of highlight that.
Most definitely. And in your case, you went toward the Navy. Now, did you choose to go aviation, or it was the choice made for you?
Well, it was my choice, right? It's always my choice. Like I was talking to my dad, who was a sailor at the time. He was a boiler tech working in the bowels of the ships. He's like, you should consider the military. And I was like, well, I don't want to carry everything I go, or everything I own everywhere I go. I don't want to get shot at. So the Army and the Marines were off the table in my book.
Fair enough.
And then I looked at the Air Force and the Navy. There was no Space Force yet, and Coast Guard really wasn't a thing where I was at. And I went to the Air Force, and they're like, do you have anything more than a traffic ticket? I was like, yes. They're like, see you later. So I went and talked to the Navy. I went and talked to the Navy, and I got in there and kept my criminal record, and I kind of held it close to the vest until the very end. But like, oh, well, we never covered this thing. Well, really, I just kind of ignored it until they brought it back up to finalize their paperwork after I'd already qualified for the nuke program and some other things. And I asked my dad, I was like, what job should I have in the Navy? He's like, I don't know, but they treat those aviation boys pretty good. And I was like, perfect. Sign me up. I'm going to sign up for good treatment. If I have the option, why not be treated well? So
right.
I did that. And then my recruiter got to the end. I was qualified. I got like an 80 on the ASVAB, and then I retook it and got a 98 or something like that. And they were like, we have to have you. Like, we have to have you in. Like, it's a thing. So I had to talk to the admiral of recruiting command and tell him my story to request a waiver to even join the military.
Mm-hmm.
And that was approved. So here I am.
That's awesome.
Right. And I can imagine because I've dealt with some of those, they call it the whole person concept waiver or the exception to policy waiver. And most individuals, you would have to they want to dig down into you as a person, down to your soul. Like, who are you? What are your values? And how can you help me? And then some of these guys, they would just quit because they don't know themselves like that to say well, I am going to join and I want to make your service better and all the details that follow it. And so
you're essentially trying to sell yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, but a lot of people, you're right. A lot of people don't know how to sell themselves. Like, tell me how you can make my life better. Well, I can tie my shoes. I can, I just.
Especially at 17, 18, what do you as a 17, 18-year-old know about life and how to make things better,
Yeah, my daughter turned 18 last week. And let me tell you, she's got a lot of lessons left to learn.
I know for me, when I was that age, I definitely still had a lot of lessons to learn in life, and still every day you're learning. I had a soccer coach in high school, and he was from Zambia, and he always said that the day you stop learning is the day you're dead.
Yeah.
And he goes, and if that day happens before you stop breathing, then you're just brain dead. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Wow, it is.
It's true. And it's a wonder in the digital age that we're able to take in so much information, get not learn a thing, or have access to things like podcasts like we're doing here today, or audiobooks, or Library of Congress, or your local libraries. There's apps for that you can download, get free books and learn. And, those of you listening that aren't learning, that aren't reading books, it's the ultimate life hack. You've got someone that dedicated 10 to 40 years of their life on a topic. They've distilled it in a book, convinced a publisher to publish this thing. And now if you read it in an afternoon or 3 afternoons, you've then downloaded this person's entire experience into your being. That's life hacking chunks of, 20-year chunks every time you read a new book. And for me, I don't really have the time to read, so I use net, which is no extra time, to do other activities. So like driving back and forth to work, commuting, while I'm riding my bike or taking a run, which let's be honest, there's more bike riding than running in my future.
That's good, because I'm the same way.
doing chores around the house or even running errands, you can have someone feeding life into you, that new thing, that new business idea, that new concept, whatever the thing is. And in 2019, thanks to audiobooks, I went through 60 books in 2019.
Wow,
that's awesome. What were some of the highlighted books that you would recommend?
Absolutely. All right, take notes. You got to write this stuff down if you're listening. You got to get The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That really opened my eyes to the possibilities of business, what it looks like online, how to do things. And it's hilarious and entertaining, so you're not going to get bored reading the book. And it brings a lot of these concepts to light that you might not have been exposed to if you've never been around someone in business or entrepreneurship. Number 2 is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He is a lead FBI hostage negotiator, and he has tons of great stories there. And he breaks it down for not only hostage negotiation, which hopefully never comes in helpful for you, but also business and your personal life. And it's really it's really a huge lesson in communication and how to work through and navigate everyday problems of life. And then I'm sure there's going to be a third one out there. But man, I haven't taken more notes since reading those 2 books than this book, Raise Your Game with Alan Stein Jr. I had the fortune to interview him for my podcast, and it's not yet released. It's going to come out here in a few months. But this guy, Alan Stein Jr., worked with the late, great Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, and
really
builds all those lessons down into 3 easy bite-sized sections of player, coach, and team, and what that looks like to be part of them. Because I always, research my guests and do whatever I want. I was kind of upset with myself because it's like 270 pages, which normally is an afternoon for me. But I was taking so much notes when I read this book, I couldn't stop. I couldn't get through it before I interviewed him. So our interview really only covers like the first 3 or 4 chapters of his book.
Wow. I mean, but that's just
awesome.
That's just so much of an impact, that's there. And especially the people that he's affected, I'm like, tell me more, feed me more. And you kind of just, you kind of get stuck on the load.
Yeah.
So you started out as an AME or aviation equipment tech. What sort of planes did you work on?
Well, so it's not aviation equipment tech; it's an aviation structural mechanic.
Structural mechanic. Sorry, apologize.
Safety equipment. So I worked on F-18s and the E-6B Mercury. F-18s, the type of systems we worked on were canopies, ejection seats, oxygen breathing systems, fire extinguishing systems, and environmental control systems. And on the E6B, there's no ejection seats, a big 707. So we didn't have canopies or ejection seats, but we did have the interior of the airplane to add. We had a galley, the lavatory, oxygen systems, fire extinguishing, and a few other extraneous systems.
That's interesting. So would you have to work engines and all that for the fire, like working fire loops? Or does that fall under a different, would that fall under the mechanics for engine techs?
We learned the bleed air pipeline, right? So after like the 5th and 9th stage of the motor, because the ADs, the mechs had the engines, right? But after that, we took the bleed air to convert it to air conditioning for the jet. And then the fire extinguishing systems between the 4 main engines and the APU, that was our responsibility.
So you had essentially firewall forward, so to speak, as what you guys covered. Wow. What was the worst job? Because I know working on aircraft, some of those ECS systems can be a bugger to deal with. So, of all the systems you worked in those airframes, what would have been the most difficult job for you to, like, if you got called out to the line for something? What was one you were like, damn it?
Well, it's not like the hardest one is probably the firewall shutoff valve for the E6B. It's on top of the motor, so the motors hang down from the wing on a strut, and you have to go in there and disassemble like 30 other things to get to this thing, and then it's bigger than the hole allotted, so you have to like move it, twist it inside the pipes to rip it out. I've done one of these in 40 minutes, which is miracle time, and I've done one of these in 14 hours.
Man, I know your frustration because I've been there with certain things too. And the whole time you're trying to take the component out, right? It was a bear to get to, and then to find out the hole's undersized as is typical in aviation, and you're just cursing the engineers the whole time, like, "What? You just 2 more inches on this fucking panel," growling. You know what I mean?
The engineers are so excited that they got everything to fit in there, and you go to take it apart, and you're like, "You guys went to college, really?
How did you get it in here in the first place?"
No. Well, look good in my CAD drawing. Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm really sure it did.
I think I've had a little bit of experience with the ECS system, or like the fire control system. And one of the main problems I've come across is we would think it's the ECS system or it's the fire control system. And so we're like, all right, replace the valve or replace the controller, whatever part of that system. When like we don't even think twice about the easy fix. Like, well, maybe the wire just got broken loose, or maybe it's a bad relay or some shit. Like, no, change the valve. Okay. And so you go through all these disconnect 14, 46 other things to get to this valve or to this so-called bad component. You put it together, same problem. And we do this like 3 or 4 times until we figure out, hey, maybe it's the relay, or maybe it's the wire or the cannon plug, whatever the case may be. And you're chasing it around for sometimes days. And then we finally fix it. Well, we just wasted like 4 or 5 days worth of work. Thanks.
Well, oftentimes in mission oriented operations, they, control or whoever gets antsies, and they start what I call the parts cannon or the parts shotgun.
Yeah.
Click, click, boom. Did that fix it? Nope. Click, click, boom. Did that fix it? And you just keep going down the line. Whereas, like you said, if you'd have just taken 30 minutes and pinned out some cables, you might have figured out that you had a short or a fault in the harness somewhere. But I think it's one of those, like, it's got to look like we're doing something. So, bring out the cannon.
Now, Travis, you've since transitioned to be a flight officer. What steps did you take to go that way?
Well, it might sound like some steps you might not have expected. There was a period in there. I was a first class, or an E6 to those of you that are not familiar with what a first class is. I was teaching. I was at CNET Det Tinker, so I was teaching our airplane, the E6, to the new guys coming in. And a situation happened where someone checked in that I thought was kind of a jackass.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my mid-20s at this point. I had really matured in my life. And someone says, hey, look, you guys are brothers. You guys are like the same person. And it was a shock to me. I didn't realize that everyone saw me like I just saw this guy. I thought I was being funny. Turns out I wasn't. And I reevaluated my life. I changed out the people I hung out with, and I looked at people that were doing things I wanted to do, people that cared about their family life, people that cared about being good husbands and good fathers, people that cared about their education, were working hard on their career, staying in shape, doing all those things. And when I did that, I realized that I wanted more. I wanted to do something differently. And this opportunity for the Stay 21, the Seaman to Admiral program, came up. And I asked some questions about it, and it sounded interesting. I asked a bunch of the old flight engineers, by the old trusty guys out there. I was like, hey, did you guys ever think about doing this? And they're like, yeah, I did when I was younger, but I really wanted to fly. And by the time I got back to it, I was too old. And I heard this a dozen times. I was too old. I let the opportunity pass me by. And I talked to my dad, who is still in there. He just retired. He's a boiler tech, first class, retired 26 years in the Navy. I was like, hey, did you ever look into this? He's like, I did. And people told me to apply. I was like, well, what happened? Why didn't you? He's like, I wanted to make chief first. And I was delaying making chief before I put the application in. And every year I thought I had chief, and every year went by and I didn't make it. So I never applied. So he let that hold him back. And he's like, look, if that's something you're interested in, apply and don't let anyone stop you. So I did. I put in the application in. I must have ran through that instruction 50 times, and I ran through it 50 times more. I put my application together, which was some gargantuan, like 896-page application. It was disgusting.
Holy cow.
Yeah. But I had decided. I was like, look, the average of making first class in my rate was 11 years, and I made it in 7. And it's not because I'm an amazing person. I just knew when those opportunities came up that my family needed more money. Mm-hmm. And I only had 1 or 2 shots a year to make this happen for them. And if I wasn't doing that, I was being a bad father.
Wow.
Right. Regardless of what it meant for my military career and more responsibility and all that other crap. Because whenever the Navy is gone, whenever the military is gone, you're left with your family. Is it intact? Do they love you? Or is it in shambles? Or are you split apart? And you get to choose that based on the things that you do. And so I decided, look, I'm going to be an officer, because the average for making chief in my rate was 17 years. And I was at my 9-year mark. I was another 9 years away, 9 years away from this thing. And I say, all right, I'm going to apply for this. If that doesn't work, I'm going to apply to be a limited duty officer. If that doesn't work, I'm going to finish my degree and go through OCS. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to join the Army and do their OCS, or whatever they call it in the Army. Mm-hmm. And when you've determined what it is that you're going to do, and you've chosen, you have that clarity, all the pieces fall in place and everything lines up. So that first application I did for Seaman Admiral program, they said yes. And I got accepted my first time out of the chute, which I was pretty shocked, especially just a year earlier, people called me a jackass.
Wow.
And just how short of a time you can turn your life around, and really focus on your goals and make those happen.
Yeah, no kidding. So you're now in the Seaman to Admin program. That's kind of like it's almost like what you said with OCS, right? Or ROTC, where you go to college first, you get your degree, and you kind of do a little bit of officer training prior to actually graduating. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You do a couple of 8 weeks up in Rhode Island at the War College. You have 8 required courses, I believe. It's been a hot minute. It's 8 required courses. We go through 6 of them in 8 weeks to get the college credit done for those. So when you go to school, because you have a shorter time period than the people coming in fresh. So I went to school full time, knocked out the other 2, and finished my degree. All in all, that took me about a year and a half to get my degree done. And get commissioned. Then once I got commissioned, sent me down to Pensacola to go through the basic flight training. You go through a civilian flight school and you get your solo done. So I've flown an airplane by myself, which was super terrifying. Flying a little Cessna all on your own.
I can imagine.
No sim time before you got on the stick?
What's that?
No, you didn't. Did you do any simulator training part?
Yeah, all part. You go through ground school, you go through the flight school, you go through time with an instructor. So you're at it. You've got like 13 hours of flying completed before you go flying by yourself, and you've done all the schooling, all the training. But 13 hours doesn't feel like enough. I tell you what.
In a previous episode we had with an Army flight warrant officer, they said from the time they get there to the time they're in the seat is like 0. Here you go, get in the seat, go. So when you're saying at least 13 hours of previous training before you actually get into the seat, that lowers my
13 hours in the seat with an instructor, plus all the ground schools all completed. All that stuff is all done ahead of time. But 13 hours doesn't feel like enough, in my opinion.
Oh,
I can agree with you on that. Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that, because I feel like after 13 hours, I'd still struggle with a little quadcopter.
Yeah. And then you go through API, Aviation Preflight Indoctrination. And this is one of the toughest schools in the military to get through. There's something every year, there's between 40% and something like 70% attrition through the school. And it's hard. It's tough. You've got it's master's degree roles. So if you get a 79, it's a failure. You're going through the swimming course at the same time. At the end of it, you go through all the swimming. You need to be an aviator, and you have to swim a mile, go through the helo dunker, all that stuff. And you're doing it all simultaneously. Well, most of the guys there are fresh out of college and they've got nothing better to do. I'm down there with my wife and 2 kids trying to get all this stuff done. And get up at 4 a.m, start studying, get the kids out to school, go to class, go swimming, go back to class, go swimming, go back to class, study for a little bit, go home, get the kids from school, get their homework done, get them dinner, get them bathed, get them in bed, study till midnight, do it again.
Wow.
Man, that's mentally tough. I mean, physically as well, with all the swimming and things you have to do. But to me, I always think mental exhaustion is worse than the physical, from my own personal perspective. So
yeah,
with all that studying and stuff going on, the physical, you're out swimming, your muscles are burning and everything else. But then to have to come home and, instead of just going to sleep, like, nope, I got 4 more hours of plowing through books to go, to get through before I can go to bed.
Yeah, if you weren't tired enough, try staying awake while reading some of that stuff.
Right.
But you go through that school, and then you go through primary. And if you're a naval flight officer, you stay in Pensacola and go across base. It's the same hangar right next to the Blue Angels where their winter home is. And you go in there and you go through contact ground school, and you go through a series of flights, and then you do instrument school. And instrument school was the place where I almost quit. The instructors there are all retired, like 05s and above. They've got thousands of hours in the airplane. They've got years worth of instruction. And wherever you're at as a student, if you're at a 4, their goal is to make you a 7. If you're at a 6, their goal is to make you a 9. If you're a 9, their goal is to make you a 13. So they're going to push you no matter where you're at. And I had 2 or 3 bad sims in a row. And I was like, look, Lord, if I'm not supposed to be here, this is a very clear indication that I can't make it happen. You let me know. If I have another bad one of these, I'm going to have to hang it up. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get through it. And I had my motorcycle at the time. I had my helmet bag and stuff. And I went in to do a sim. And I got to the sim school and I hopped off my motorcycle and my flight bag was gone.
Oh,
And I was going in to do a sim event. And it was the one right after I had done a bunch of stuff. And I hopped back on the bike and I hightailed it back. It wasn't that far. And I went back through and the bag was nowhere to be found. So I went to the instructor because I got there a couple hours early. I wanted to make sure I had everything in order to say, look, I just lost all of my books. I lost all my prep. I lost all of my everything. What do I need to do for this sim today? How can I get this thing done? And he's like, well, you got to run over here. I had to run a couple different places on base to get all the books I need. I did charts. I get the charts, charted out for all the stuff I was going to do to remember to do all those things. And then right before the sim started, I got a call and turns out a retiree found my flight bag and had called into the base. And because I had a prescription bottle in there for something, I don't know, Midol at this point, I couldn't tell you. I had my name on it. So when I called in, they're like, is this you? I'm like, yes. So I knew the stuff was safe. Went ahead and knocked out the sim and I crushed it because I had gone over everything at least twice, right? And crushed it, got the bag, and then it was really smooth sailing from there through graduation and then on to the final school, which is with your specific aircraft. And then I got my wings, which if we're looking at the video here, there's a little cut out of my wings right above my head there.
Nice.
Yeah. And that doesn't even include SEER school.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, man.
Learning how to kill rabbits and eat bird eyes and stuff.
So you said you went to you had to finish your degree in about a year and a half. Where did they end up sending you for that degree, or was it Annapolis? Did you go to Annapolis? I know you said you went to Rhode Island for a bit.
Any participating college. I was in, so the E-6B Mercury is stationed at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And to avoid moving, I went down to the University of Oklahoma down in Norman, which was, 15 miles from my house. Finished up there, family got to stay, got to avoid a move. I'm very big about avoiding moves if I don't have to do them.
Sure.
Did fall. What did I do? Summer, fall, spring, summer, fall, graduate. So I did 5 semesters of college and graduated.
Wow.
Nice.
That's pretty fast.
Congratulations.
Thanks so much. And that makes me the first person in my family to graduate college.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's fantastic. Setting the bar high.
Yeah, no kidding.
Trying to.
Well, that's good though. Give people, give your kids and say, look, Dad did all this stuff. I can do it too.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, since you became a naval flight officer, what was the transition like going from being an aviation structures tech to being a pseudo pilot or a flight officer?
Pseudo pilot. The transition was tough because no one cared that I already had 12 years of experience in the Navy that was already a first class. That was hard for me to get by because in my community, as the instructor I was teaching, everyone knew who I was. They called me when they couldn't solve their miracle thing they needed. They would call me and I would solve it. And everyone knew who I was. They understood my experience. They understood my authority. And to go back to being an 01, ain't no one care about any of that stuff.
Right. You're just the lieutenant, or in your case, ensign. You're just the lost ensign who can't read a map, right?
Yeah, you're just the ensign that can't do anything. And the thing that kind of killed me, like it still hurts me personally, is my biggest attribute has been and likely always will be, communication and leadership. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out as a junior officer in the Navy, they don't care about your leadership at all, especially in aviation. They don't care until you're a department head, till you've gone out and done some things, because that's the natural progression of everyone else. You really haven't learned enough to be a leader. So my main focus was leadership. And what I didn't know until it was far too late is that they don't care about that at my rank. They care about being technically proficient and being an expert at your job, at your mission, your tactical qualification. And I didn't know that. But no one told me, and no one told a lot of people. The only difference is the other people have nothing else to focus on because they have no leadership experience or ability. Mm-hmm. So for me, that was getting in the way of some of my career, not knowing that little factoid, which would have been super helpful.
Now, so how did you overcome that then, using your leadership to then all? still being able to use your leadership abilities, but also becoming more technically proficient at your specific job, kind of blending those two together to show your superiors that, hey, you do have what it takes. Yes, you're learning and becoming more proficient, but look, I also am capable of more than just being technically proficient.
I took whatever they gave me and I turned it into gold. Here is a muddy pile of garbage. What are you going to do with it? And some people would just dry out the garbage. Some people would tidy up the garbage. I turned it into straight gold for them. I used my experience that I did have. And I went back to the same community that I was enlisted in. So I knew a lot of the senior leadership and I leveraged my network to help with the things that I shouldn't be doing, right? I used them to do it. I focused my time and doubled down on what I needed to know and learn and be proficient at. And I left there fully qualified. I was a combat systems officer, instructor, and mission commander on a $500 million nuclear command and control platform.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So, have you ever run into a situation where a fellow officer thinks that you're just another run-of-the-mill officer, but you had to flex your experience on him or kind of demonstrate that you know what the system is, you know how to fix it, and you're more than what meets the eye?
I've had to do that a few times. One, I had to do with an enlisted guy in the AT shop. I was the avionics division officer, which is not a big fancy title, but I went in there just to have lunch with the guys and get to know them and understand, who I was and who we were working for. And one of the young bucks, like maybe an E4, was kind of jacking his jaw a little bit and running his mouth. And my buddy, who was for 10 years or more, he like jumps out of his office and like looks to see what's going on. And I looked over at him, I was like, "Hey chief, do you want me to take care of this?" And he's like, "No, sir. No, I don't. I will talk to him." And I left and I came back the next day and he was groveling and mumbling. It's like, "Oh, sir, I didn't know. I had no idea who you were and this and that." I was like, "Oh, so you treat other junior officers like garbage too?"
Like a show can stumble on their own words. That's awesome.
Sometimes those lessons are necessary. I haven't really had to raise my voice as an officer, which is fantastic. It turns out if you have to raise your voice as an officer, you've already lost control and respect of the people around you anyway. So I haven't had to do that unless it conserves safety. So I've had to raise my voice a couple of times in safety, but really most people are intelligent enough and motivated enough to get whatever you need done. You just got to make sure they understand what the heck you're talking about and that your expectations are set. And once those are done, especially in the military, it's pretty easy. Stuff gets done and things move forward. So I haven't had to do that too much.
Right.
That's good. It reminds me of that one line from Game of Thrones. A true king doesn't have to say he's king.
Very true.
You know what I mean? Your presence and leadership speak for themselves. Your what do they say? Your reputation precedes you.
Yeah. Anyone that says, "I'm funny, I'm not a scumbag, I'm in charge," all those things are lies because you shouldn't have to say any of those things to be true.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Now, you also run the nonprofit architect, which helps other nonprofit organizations start up for one, grow and help reach their goals, whichever their goals may be. What prompted you to start doing nonprofit work?
Well, a lot of it was my childhood, right? There's no way. So what the piece that we've left out of this is the reason why I moved so many times.
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons why I moved so many times is my mom suffered from bipolar disorder, dissociative identity disorder, PTSD, and paranoid schizophrenia. So every time she needed treatment, we would have to go live either with a family member or in a foster home. And then when she got out of treatment, we'd go somewhere else and move. So, going into and out of treatment, whether it was a week or 6 months, included 3 moves or 2 moves. Wherever you are to the place you're staying to some new place when you get out, because obviously you're not paying your rent the whole time you are in treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But there was always someone, some organization, some church to keep us sheltered, clothed, and fed. And when I finally got to a point where I wasn't in scarcity and survival mode, I wanted to be part of the community. I was like, I didn't know how to be part of it. Like, what do we do in the community? Like, what do people do? And they're like, well, people volunteer and they do nonprofit stuff and they give and they serve on boards and different things. And I went to where those things were. I didn't know what I was doing. I just know that I could show up and have a good attitude, which is most of life, right? Showing up and having a good attitude, and be willing to help. And as soon as I did that, I published my first book. I got on the board of 2 nonprofits. I started doing some fundraising, raised $500,000 in just a couple of years. Did some wonderful things. And then I got stationed out in Bahrain, this little island back here. And I was like, how am I supposed to keep doing all this cool nonprofit stuff? And someone's like, well, you do have like a golden voice. I was like, oh, do I? You know,
smooth jazz talk radio.
Yeah, talk radio. This is Late Night Jams with Taco John. You know,
I think you're onto something.
I'm onto something here. So I started hosting an interview show, bringing on nonprofit leaders, business leaders, consultants, and people with just the special skills to help nonprofit do stuff better with it. Figuring out Facebook Lives or MailChimp, or how to get celebrities to stump for your show. We had Vincent James come on, and he showed us how he uses Keep Music Alive and the voices and video from Julie Andrews, Jack Black, Sarah McLaughlin, Vanessa Williams to help him promote his nonprofit.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. What was the first nonprofit or organization you worked with before, obviously starting your own?
So I don't currently run a nonprofit at all.
Oh, okay.
I've never done that, but I worked with Books by Vets, and they help veterans or first responders heal through telling their story. And we published a couple of books, a couple of anthologies, Walk with Warriors, and the primary author, you can find this on Amazon if you want to, Shannon Whittington. And one of the chapters in there is me, talking about my garbage childhood and some other things in the military. And then so with that book, we helped 22 veterans tell their story. Every chapter was a different veteran telling their story. And then we released Resilient Warriors the next year, which was 22 female veterans sharing their story. And you want to hear some gut-wrenching stuff, horrendous stories, go ahead and check out Resilient Warriors, also by Shannon Whittington.
Wow.
I did editing in like 16 of those chapters, and you want to talk about comparing stories? I was hurting reading those chapters.
Wow. Well, I can imagine. So, like you said, everybody's story is a little different. You learn from hearing or reading others that just how horrible people can be from time to time.
Yeah.
But glad that those individuals were able to share their stories. Hopefully, get a little closure and maybe some healing out of it as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, it's not just individual healing, right? Anyone that gets to read that story is going to get a little bit of themselves healed too. And that's the real value of sharing your story. As soon as you can let go of your pain, as long as you're holding it, it's like you're hugging a cactus. You're just stabbing yourself while you're holding this thing. And yeah, if you wiggle it around a little bit, it hurts. But man, it's not going to heal till you let it go.
Right. That's a very good analogy. Now, you as the architect, what are some things, or what are the top things to consider when, say, someone is deciding to start a nonprofit and then comes to you to help them grow out?
Sure, absolutely. So things to consider is that you might not want to start a nonprofit. And it's kind of shocking to some people. Really, when people say that I want to start a nonprofit. That's not what they're really saying. What they're really saying is, I have a group of people or the environment or animals or something that I want to help make better. And I currently believe the best way to do that is by starting my own organization, which may or may not be true, right? What most people that don't start with, or they do start when they don't realize, is how to keep with IRS compliance and starting a nonprofit, all the paperwork that goes into that. And they have no idea how to run a business, because you incorporate as a business before you get nonprofit tax status, because your 501c is a tax status, not a business plan. It's like you get your 501c3 and that money just rains from the heavens and you can help all the people, right? Most nonprofits don't make an impact in their first 5 years. They have no real impact. So if you're looking to make impact, figure out what it is that you want to do, find out who else is doing it, and then do it with them. They've already gone through the pain of creating an organization, starting the paperwork, filing with the IRS. You can just show up and feel good. You can just show up and help.
That's a good point. Bring your good ideas to somebody who's done the initial legwork, and then take that existing organization and put it leaps and bounds ahead with your input.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to have that impact, that feeling that you want to contribute to society. What you might find is no one else is doing that, and there's some other things you can do, like the United Way. They're a big umbrella, and they'll allow you to start a program underneath their 501c3. So you can be a program manager for the thing that you want to do, delivering services, and they have all the paperwork and compliance and stuff that they have to deal with, and you get to be boots on the ground that so many of us like doing. But you've done your diligence. You found out that people aren't providing these services. United Way is not available. Maybe an organization in another state is looking to branch out into your area, and then you can be the person there, which is much cheaper to do. They've got the national certification, right? They've got it. If you're listening to this and you're a nonprofit, there's 33 states that require registering as a 501c3 to operate in. So if you're operating in more than one state and you're not registered in that state, you've got to file the paperwork for that state if that's required. But you can start the chapter in your state. So you can have all their logos, all their branding, all their tax ID number, all the bylaws, all of the things that are a pain to create, you can just get from someone else and create your own little chapter there. And there's so many organizations that do that. I just had a meeting the other day with the Batlin Betties, which is a group of pinup gals that go around with hijinks and, doing good stuff to veterans and first responders and having a lot of fun. Their main office is out of Texas, and we're in Oklahoma, and they're working on the paperwork to get official here in Oklahoma so they can do that without the IRS being a pain like they can be.
For sure.
For sure, I can imagine. And I think with nonprofits, one of their biggest issues that they run into is funding or money. What would be some of the things you would say for a nonprofit, either A, not having any money or struggling to get said funding?
Sure. I'm going to backtrack a little bit and answer this, but like the three main areas of starting a nonprofit are admin, that's your board, that's your executive director, that's compliance with the IRS. Then you've got programs, which is the fun stuff, right? Delivering services to the people in need. And then the third leg of that is funding. And if you don't have those three things at least started or pseudo figured out before you start, you're going to have problems. Funding is the one that's the biggest problem. And that's the one that we help with the most at the Nonprofit Architect. You know how it seems like nonprofits are just spending all their time chasing a buck to make things happen. Our programs are designed to automate funding each and every month so you can say no to more work and say yes to more donations.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. Now, is there a website, or you said there's other groups available for somebody looking to get into it? Is there a kind of a one-stop shop that has most nonprofits or organizations listed that you can go through and say, hey, I'm interested in this, or I want to get involved in whatever, and you can kind of go through there and see who's located where and contact info?
So I'm assuming mostly veterans listen to this show, is just my guess. There's a great organization called the afteractionnetwork.org, afteractionnetwork.org. They have a compilation of lists of every service in your area, what it takes to apply for those services, if you're someone that's in need, or has contact information if you want to help them out. If you're wanting to get involved and you're not sure what to do, go to your local, what is it called, Center for Nonprofits in your Chamber of Commerce and see who's in your area. You can of course, donate to or volunteer for a big national organization, but those don't really have the same impact as someone in your local community might have. So if you're looking to make an impact, to get involved, to do something good, find whoever it is in your area doing things, either through the Center of Nonprofits or the Chamber of Commerce, or by asking me as your last resort, like you've done those first two, and as your last resort, to figure out how you can pitch in and do something good.
So where can one, either military or not, find you to help them either A, get started on their nonprofit, or to grow their nonprofit influence?
I am on Facebook most often. You can find me on any social media, Nonprofit Architect. You can search on Google the Nonprofit Architect podcast, and I think I'm like the first 30 results. So that makes it easy. My SEO was off the chain, guys, off the chain. And then you can send me an email at nonprofitarchitect@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, nonprofitarchitect.org.
Now, I've heard you also have what's called a nonprofit alliance. Where can we find that one?
The Nonprofit Alliance is on hold, and that is not a thing as of this very moment. But what we do have for people that are interested, we have podcasting guide that's available. In this podcasting guide, I bought one of these things when I was getting started. It was like $27, and I was really disappointed when I got it. It had like 6 pages. It was kind of like a do this, do this, do this, but it didn't have any context. It didn't have any how to, didn't have any reasons why. And it really was frustrating that I spent $27 on something that maybe didn't help me so much. So I created my own podcast guide, the Ultimate Podcasting Guide, and it's got 46 pages of how to, why, how to monetize, what you should name your show, why, how often should I post, how do I find guests, how do I be an expert guest, how do I monetize this thing. I've got templates that show you how to do all this stuff, how to contact celebrities, how to send out an email, what all this stuff looks like. And I kept it the same price, that $27 that I feel like I lost out on. And this thing is getting some buzz. I got calls immediately about a course, and now I have my course under review for accreditation. And what that means is you could take it at a college and get college credit. It might be a certification, an official certification from the USD. It's going to be big, and it's looking pretty amazing right now.
Congratulations on that.
We're happy to have your ebook, matter of fact. And gentlemen, I'll share this with you as well. It's some very, I'm going to tell you, it's informative. It's probably like the most informative guide that you could possibly have.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Keep us posted if you wouldn't mind, Travis, on your course. I'd be interested in signing up.
Absolutely. That we're building that out right now. And the only thing that's frustrating about this conversation is I don't have this thing all automated on my website yet. So if you want this thing, drop me a line. Go to nonprofitarchitect.org and be like, Travis, give me your guide. I heard it's amazing. I don't have the one-click buy and stuff set up yet. I'm still getting messages. I'm getting messages from people I have never met that are saying, hey, I heard your podcast guide is amazing. Send it to me. $27, you're going to know to going from idea to startup to execution to how to market this thing, how to create little headliner promos that you can use in your social media for promotion, how to get this thing onto YouTube and everything else in between.
Very awesome.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Travis, do you have any other nuggets of knowledge do you want to share with all the listeners out there, both veterans and non?
Yes. Everything that you do in your life comes down to choice. And if you've made bad choices in the past, you can't do anything about them. You can apologize. You can forgive them. You can forgive yourself. You can move forward, but make better choices. If you're not educating yourself, educate yourself, whether that's formally through some kind of degree program, a certificate program, or informally through podcasts, audiobooks. And if you're a nonprofit out there and you're not educating yourself, you are doing the people you're trying to serve a disservice because you're not learning how to do it better, how to do it cheaper, how to do it more effectively, how to free up your time, how to build a team, how to have all that stuff. If you're not developing yourself, you're just wasting away. You're not doing things right. I know MVP brought that up a little bit earlier. You've got to be developing yourself. There's not a chance in hell that I should have been where I am. There's not a chance. Right? I had the slimmest of chances. 5 foster homes, just that number alone puts me in this huge category of people that don't make it for whatever reason. See, you can take whatever's given before you. You can decide, I'm going to follow this example or I'm going to reject this example. There's a famous story with 2 brothers. One is an alcoholic and one is the Fortune 500 CEO. And you ask both of them why they are that way. Their answer is the same. You see, my father was an alcoholic. I had no choice. So they both had the choice. One had the choice and he chose to reject it completely. And he vaunted himself up to be a Fortune 500 CEO. And the alcoholic brother said he had no choice. He had to be exactly like his dad. That's garbage. You have the choice to do it right, to do it better. You have the choice to go to the gym. You have the choice to do push-ups in your house if you can't afford a gym. You have the choice to go to the library and read free books. You have the choice to go on YouTube and learn the skill you need to do. Whatever the thing is, you have the choice to do it. You just have to be the one to do it. No one cares about your life more than you. No one cares about your career more than you do. No one cares about your family more than you do. And if you're not caring, you're not doing it right.
That's awesome. That's a very strong message.
Well said.
Very well said. Very well said. Travis, it was such an honor to have you onto the show. We've learned so much in the short amount of time we were talking with you. I'm like, my life's changed already just from all the stuff you shared. And I'm pretty sure anyone else listening to this, they have some idea of how to go forward both within themselves and with the community they're with, and then also how to find you or take some of the information that you share to make what they want to get going move forward.
Hey, it was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on the show today, fellas.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on, Travis, aka Mr. Taco John. Your story is one of a lot of highs and lows. Fortunate, it's been a lot more highs than lows, but you're definitely an inspiring individual to make me, want to be better at my career, better father at home, better active member of the community. So thank you for your time and your wisdom.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks again. We'd like to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to keep producing episodes, bring on guests like Travis, and keep Shoreline ever happy to produce our show, with special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Stephanie Boatman, Jenny Dignan, Ryan Frushauer, Daniel Schubert, and Steven Shivers. Thank you all, our patrons, so much for all your support and again, your patronage. If you have ideas, topics, or stories for the show, or you would like to be a guest on the show, visit cancelformaintenance.com and drop us a line on our contact us section. We will do whatever we can to get you and or your ideas onto the show. Check out our sponsor, Rockwell Time, for all sorts of outdoors and sporting apparel such as watches, safety-rated sunglasses, and snowboarding goods. Visit rockwelltime.com, use code CX4MX, and save 10% off your purchases. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/cancelformaintenance. Patronage again allows us to continue making episodes and maintain our gear. Patrons also get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord and discounts to our upcoming merch.